Welcome to Theme Deck Tuesday and welcome back to the tournament section of Pokemon Trading Card Game Online. In this week's video we are going to be using the Inteleon theme deck. Has been a little while since I did my initial review of the deck, so I thought I would go back, revisit it and take it to a tournament setting, as I've been doing this quite often with some of the previous decks that I have already looked at. We've been taking it into the tournaments here and seeing just how well it can get on. Now, of course, we do always have to contend with the best of the best in this format. Typically, we will have some players who aren't as experienced, and we will face up against some easy matchups, and we'll always take the victory there when we can. But in the finals, we do typically go up against some of the harder decks, like your Soaring Storms and your Relentless Flames, all of the standard stuff that we do see in the theme deck meta. But we'll have to wait and see what we come up against in this tournament as we wait for players to get into the match here, and the first match finally begins. So starting it off here, we are up against the Relentless Flame deck right off the bat. Hopefully we can take advantage of our weakness, or type advantage that we have, since we are hitting them for weakness. But of course my opponent does have things like the Nidoqueen, which they can potentially use as a solid attacker rather than using that Charizard, which is weak to water. We're going to be looking to set up some of our Inteleon here as quickly as we can. We do already have the Drizzile in our hand, which is very good. Also, opening the Pokekit is going to allow us to get out a Sobble nice and early here. We do have some good consistency in the deck overall compared to my opponent's supporter cards, but of course if they can get the Nidoqueen set up, then that is going to allow them to search out any Pokemon that they need. Also, getting the Rapidash down early is going to be very strong for my opponent if they can get some good heads on the agility coin flips. So like I said, we'll start it off with a Pokekid on our end so that we can guarantee ourselves a Sobble here. Since we do already have part of the evolution line in our hand, it just makes sense to get the Sobble down nice and early. Unfortunately, we don't have the means to attack just yet with our Krabby, unfortunately, but we can do an attack on the following turn, hopefully getting a knockout. But of course, it is based on coin flips here, flip 2 coins. If either of them is tails, this attack does nothing, so it's not going to be very good if that happens. But at the same time, we do have a hop, so maybe we'll be able to draw into a evolution, or we do have the switch as well, and we could build towards an Inteleon on the back. Let's see what my opponent goes for though. Do they have the Rapidash? Doesn't look like it. They just have the Ponyta attacking here for 40 damage, which is perfectly fine by me. So we'll go with our evolution here. We do pick up a Cramorant, which is not too shabby. And we'll also play down our hop to draw 3 cards. Not too amazing of a draw, but we do get a Great Ball, which I will play now, just in case we get that Kingler evolution, and we do get it. We'd also have the Inteleon as an option, but we really want to go for the Kingler here so we can start putting some pressure on my opponent and dealing some big damage. We do also have the Pokemon Catcher we could try and use here. We would be dealing a total of 80 damage. I believe the Charmeleon does have 90 HP, so not quite going to get the full value out of that if we go for that route. I think we'll hold on to it for now, and we'll just take a knockout on my opponent's active since they have committed all of their energy to it. We also get to discard the top card of their deck. Not going to be super relevant as we just discard an energy there, but getting that knockout is very good since they did commit 2 energy, looking to try and get that Rapidash set up. Now they are sacrificing another Ponyta since they didn't want to be promoting their Charmeleon. They want to have the Charizard set up here, and they are able to get that with the double heads off of the Timer Ball. Very nice, getting double evolution Pokemon from their deck and into play here. They get the second Charmeleon as well as that Charizard, so they should be in a good spot to start getting some Charizard into play and swinging for some big damage. Now of course we will have to set up our own board so that we can combat this and try and contend with my opponent's Charizard. They are going in here just attaching onto the Ponyta so they can retreat it, and they're using that Roaring Resolve, attaching 2 energy from the deck, and that is going to allow them to get the knockout on our Kingler. A nice 130 damage is all that they need. It's going to put some pressure on us now, since we don't have a solid attacker to work with. This Cramorant, of course, just has the Water Arrow, which is going to deal 20 damage to one of my opponent's Pokemon. Not quite a significant enough amount to really amount to anything, so we'll just have to count on drawing into the Inteleon here, I reckon. Of course, we could always go in and use Water Reserve on our Manatine, which is going to thin the deck and also get us some more water energy. So I don't hate that too much. I think we'll go in and actually go for that route here. We do also have the Pokemon Catcher, which I could try and use to stall my opponent for an extra turn. So we'll go for that. We do get a tail, so not going to be particularly relevant there. And it is just a Water Reserve from us. Getting 3 energies into the hand is nice, as that's going to allow us to actually attack, but it also thins the deck here, so hopefully we can draw into an Inteleon on this following turn. Otherwise it's going to be pretty rough to have to deal with here. My opponent does have the Charmeleon, of course, as we've seen in the previous turn there. They also get down a Nidoran, which is going to start getting them towards that Nidoqueen in the coming turns, but doesn't look like they have a lot going on here. They haven't really played any supporter cards. They played a Copycat before, and now they seem a little bit stuck. They don't have too much happening, but they at least have the Charizard, which is all they need in order to continuously attack, and that is certainly proving to be successful for them. We could go in and deal 80 damage with a Drizzile hitting for weakness, but that doesn't seem too great here, so we will promote the Cramorant and just look to use it as a sacrifice. We get a Tutel. I think we could be attaching onto the Tutel here. The alternative is, of course, attaching onto Cramorant. I suppose we can deal 20 damage to one of my opponent's Pokemon, which does mean the active, which could be a relevant amount, hitting the active for 40 damage, puts it to a total of 80 damage on there. It's going to make it difficult for my opponent to use the Roaring Resolve ability over and over, so let's actually go for that, limit their options here, and it does at least mean that we can go in with the Drizzile on this coming turn. Of course, we could have gone in as well with the Drizzile, done the 80. That would have put them down to a pretty low amount of HP, what, 30 HP remaining. Still would have allowed them to use the Roaring Resolve for at least one more turn, which is problematic to say the least. And they are, of course, going to be using it anyway, so going in with the Cramorant seems fine. We can always go in with the Drizzile the following turn. My opponent did attach onto the Ponyta as well, so they're still hoping that they can get a Rapidash if they can. But that Rapidash won't save them completely. They do have to get the heads, of course, in order to prevent damage. So let's go in with our Drizzile, and we'll get the knockout on the Charizard. We get an energy switch, is not going to be helpful at all here. So we will just take the knockout on the Charizard. Finally picking up another prize card, hoping that it's a supporter. And okay, just a switch. That is definitely not going to be any use to us. My opponent promotes the Farfetch'd, which is going to allow them to draw some cards here and get back in the game. They also have a Nest Ball, which is going to get them a basic Pokemon from their deck straight onto the bench, and it is a third Charmander here, looking to get that Charizard set back up. Of course, they have that Charmeleon on the bench, so this Farfetch'd is really going to put in a lot of work to build up the attackers that my opponent needs to stay in this game. We do get into a Dreadnought, so we will have to try and build up some energy here. It does have some hefty attack cost, a 3 energy attack cost, of course. If we have 1 more energy, we could actually use that, since we do have the energy switch available, but we will have to draw into another energy to make that happen. Would actually prefer that, since we do have the Drizzile here. I would like to get the Inteleon into play, and attacking with the Dreadnought would certainly protect our Inteleon. My opponent does get ahead off of the Timer Ball as well, meaning that they do have the Charizard, so they could actually just go in with the Charizard, knocking out our Drizzile, and that would pretty much seal up the game for them since we don't have any attackers available. We wouldn't have any way to power up this Dreadnought either since we can only attach 1 energy per turn, so we would have no attackers available whatsoever. I'd highly recommend my opponent to go in and do that, but we'll have to see if they choose to go for that line, and yep, they do realise that that is what they have to go and do here, and I mean, we'll draw our top deck, but there's really no way that we can win this game now. My opponent will only have 2 prize cards remaining after this knockout, and they can continue to use the Charizard just like they've been doing all throughout this game, so I think it's going to be a concede from us, unfortunately. I was really hoping that we could go in and take advantage of our typing, hit them for weakness, and really dominate, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. We draw the Pokekid a little bit too late here as we don't have any means of winning. Could have used that a bit sooner, get an Inteleon into play, but it's not going to happen, sadly. Let's get into another tournament, see if we can make it a little bit better. Do still have the 4 tickets remaining to try again, so let's get into another one and see if that's any better. Okay, we're back in the tournament and ready to try it again. Hopefully we don't have to do that rematch, or if we do then hopefully we get a little bit better luck, but at least give me some easier decks to face in the opening rounds. That would be very much appreciated. We do have another fire deck here though, is the Mewtwo deck with the welders in it, which is able to accelerate energy very quickly, so might be a little bit tricky here as they will be putting on a lot of pressure. Our deck is very much a slow build up of pressure and a little bit more methodical, I would say. We do start off with the Cramorant here, so we can start doing some snipe damage and then put on some decent amount of pressure once we get the 2 energies on there. We do also have the Research, which is a very nice card to start off with, but losing the Ordinary Rod does hurt a little. Now my opponent isn't going to be able to take a knockout on their first turn, I don't believe. I mean, we do have 110 HP, they can only hit for 70, and they also started with the Mewtwo, which is definitely not a Pokemon that you want to have in your active spot. So with that in mind, I think we will just pass over to my opponent and we can start attacking them the following turn. Didn't play any of my Great Balls as it does mean that we can dig a little bit deeper when it comes to our turn. My opponent does get the turn 1 Welder though, which is going to allow them to accelerate those 2 energies as well as manually attach for the turn. But now we can use our Great Balls. We do get some Krabbies, get a Tootle. I think Krabby is the way to go. I do like the Kingler in this deck. It has some pretty nice attacks overall. So we'll go with that, and Great Ball again, getting a Cramorant this time around. Not too shabby. We'll also go for the Professor's Research. Like I mentioned, really sad that we are losing an Ordinary Rod, but we really need to get some cards drawn here so that we can get an attack off, and that is exactly what we're going to go for. I'll also put down another Krabby, why not, and we'll attack my opponent for a massive 50 damage. Nothing too amazing as my opponent does have 120 HP on this Mewtwo. It's going to take us a total of 3 turns if we want to knock it out with a Cramorant. And my opponent is also building up attackers, of course, as you would expect. So let's evolve into our Dreadnought. We also have a Mantine here, which honestly is not too terrible. I think it will be attaching onto here. We could even use it right now. I mean, my opponent isn't putting any pressure on, so I kind of like using this so that we can build up some energy in the hand and ensure that we have some good amount of energy to attack with. Now, it doesn't quite help the fact that my Cramorant had to attack first for 50 because the Mantine, of course, does attack for 60. So if we had started with that, we would have been able to 2-hit this Mewtwo, but that's not the case, unfortunately. But at the very least, we can build up some good amount of attackers in the back here, so that is definitely what I'm going to go for. We have our Dreadnought as a big threat that we can build up, so I'll go for that for the time being, and we'll just Water Reserve again, get another 3 energy out of the deck, mean that we have enough energy for all these coming turns. We do also have the Inteleon in the hand, so hopefully we can draw into a Drizzile at this point, because getting all of these water energy out of the deck is really going to help to thin it out of the energy, and we can get cards that we actually want, like Pokemon and the trainer cards. But my opponent does take the first knockout here, get another Tutel, and I'll just be attaching onto a Dreadnought again, no reason to play down the Tutel, and we'll attack my opponent for another 50 damage. Going over to them, they're looking to get some evolutions on their side as well. They do have those Littens, as they want to be evolving into the Incineroar, as it does boost their damage by 30, which is obviously going to help them a great amount, but this Mewtwo is the only attacker in their deck, I believe, which is not a fire type, so getting rid of this as quickly as possible is going to be crucial. We do get into the Drizzile, which is very nice, and we can actually potentially attach to it, but I mean, we have Vice Bite, yes, decent. Also, a Jawlock is going to be the main one here, so I think I'll attach a third energy onto the Dreadnought. And we could also put down a Tutel, but it's not really any rush to, because the Dreadnought does have such a high attack cost, so I'll hold off on the Tutel for now. Just take the knockout on my opponent's Mewtwo, and we get a nice little Great Ball, which is very good. We do have a good selection of cards to choose from here, and we'll be able to get that Inteleon into play, so we have a nice choice of attackers as well. My opponent gets a Fisherman to put 3 energy from the discard pile into their hand, and they are just going to be attacking us with their Litten here, which does get the knockout, as it is doing a significant amount of damage, but no big deal because we have a massive Dreadnought that we can come in with. We'll be attaching and also evolving into our Inteleon, like I mentioned, and I think we'll go for a Pokekid first of all, so that we can continue to thin the deck here. I think we could get another Inteleon line set up, that seems pretty reasonable to me. And we'll also play out our Great Ball here, looking to get a couple of more pieces, and we can also get the Drizzile, so that is perfect. Only thing that we're missing now is the Kingler, which I suppose I could have grabbed there with the Pokekid, but really want to prioritize the Inteleon line for sure. I'm going to attack my opponent for the knockout, as we are hitting for a weakness. It's no big deal, and there we go, we get the Kingler. So there you go. If you want to get a specific card, all you have to do is ask for it, and of course my opponent is going to concede, as they have no combating Pokemon for the type advantage that we have over them, since we are hitting them for weakness. We have that Dreadnought set up. There's no way that they were able to make a comeback in that match, which is great to see. I'll see you in the next match though, and let's see how we get on in that one. Moving into game 2 here, we're up against the Raikou deck, which has Ampharos in it as well. Very powerful deck, as they are able to paralyze you if they get that Ampharos up, as well as dealing a bunch of snipe damage, which is potentially a big deal, but the main threat here is going to be the fact that they have a lightning Pokemon, and a number of our water Pokemon are of course weak to lightning. For example, as you can see, the Krabby is weak to lightning, also the Dreadnought weak to lightning, so a lot on the line here. Usually we're the ones hitting for weakness, but this time around it is going to be my opponent, which is able to take advantage of weakness and completely decimate our deck. Hopefully we can get a good draw off of this Great Ball. Getting us into a Kingler would be excellent, as then we could start discarding cards from the top of my opponent's deck if we get that Kingler in play. Otherwise, just dealing 40 damage for 1 energy is going to be good against their deck, as they typically take quite a few turns to get set up here, but even just getting a fairly straightforward attacker on the go is going to be beneficial for my opponent. Getting an energy onto the Blitzel here can deal 10 damage for just 1 energy. Let's get a Great Ball down. Come on. Yes, there is the Kingler. Perfect draw. Like I said in the last game, you want something, you just gotta ask for it, and the game will provide it to you. We have some energy here. I'm not quite sure where I want to put it. I think putting one onto the Mantine won't hurt. And we'll pass it over to my opponent. It does have a 3 energy attack cost on Kingler here, which could be useful, but I think it's not going to be super relevant, as we're probably going to be using it to attack for the 40 damage at a time. We'll just have to see what my opponent has as well though. And of course the Mantine also weak to lightning, so very good. I think pretty much everything in our deck is going to be weak to lightning. which is going to be a little bit of a problem, but my opponent does do the double attachment onto Blitzel, so they're looking to get the Zeb Striker down and attack with that, as the Blitzel, of course, not going to be dealing a huge amount, just 40 damage with that weakness. Of course, it's going to be a slow attacker, even with a weakness, so getting the Zeb Striker down here is going to make it so my opponent can easily draw through their deck, as well as take out all of our Pokemon. That is exactly why I attached to the Mantine, as well as it means that we're not losing an energy on the active. Interesting that my opponent didn't choose to use the sprint ability here on the Zeb Striker. They can discard their hand and then draw 4 cards. Very strong ability to be able to use, and the fact that they didn't go for it tells me that they have something pretty powerful in their hand that they're wanting to hold on to. We will go for our evolution though on our Kingler, and we'll also use our Hop to draw 3 cards. Not an amazing draw, but at least we do have a couple of useful items here. And we'll just go for our attack, nothing else left to do, and we'll discard a lightning energy from the top of their deck. So yeah, it's going to take us a bit here, as they do have a significant amount of HP. 110 is nothing to scoff at on a stage 1 Pokemon in this format, as we do have to 3-hit them with our attack. Like I said, we could have went for the other attack on Kingler, but when they're hitting us for 160 damage, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult match to do anything against my opponent here. We could go in with our Mantine. That is going to allow us to hit for 60, but we're going to be 10 damage short if we do that, so it doesn't seem like a good idea to go for that route. We'll just have to sacrifice our Tutel here. Also, putting down the Dreadnought seems pretty pointless, so we'll just have to go for a Pokekid, search out something else that we can actually use an attack with. I guess we'll take the Sobble, and I mean, if we get into the Inteleon, then even better, but yes, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a good time for us. We could try and use a Pokemon catcher, but that doesn't get us towards anything, as it's just going to be delaying the inevitable. And most stuff in my opponent's deck does have a pretty low retreat cost anyway. I mean, what are we going to bring up? Like the Smeargle has a 1 retreat cost. We bring up the Blitzel, also has a 1 retreat cost. So the Pokemon catcher as a stall method is certainly not going to help us all that much either, and is not worth our time. As I mentioned, going in with the Mantine here is going to be our next action, but we are going to be 10 damage short once we do that, and my opponent is just going to be knocking us out back to back on these coming turns. They do get an attachment down as well as a lady, so they can draw some energies out of their deck. Going to be good for building up some more attackers, not that they need it. All they needed was this 1 Zeb Striker in order to chew through our entire board, and that is all thanks to the weakness. As we have seen, it can be good if we're the ones hitting for weakness, but as soon as they start hitting us for weakness, things quickly fall apart here. My opponent takes another knockout and also takes another prize card as a result, going down to just 3 prize cards remaining. We do actually draw into the Drizzle, which is nice. I'll give it that. My deck is choosing to actually draw quite nicely for us. It's just a shame that we're not going to be able to do anything against my opponent's deck in this situation. So, not going to be getting a lot of rewards from these tournaments. Once again, very unfortunate and very similar to the previous experiences we had when we tried out other decks that aren't quite in the top 10 or best decks category, but are still fairly competitive and fun decks to use nevertheless. So I wanted to try them out in the tournament setting, see how we get on, but don't think we're going to be able to get anything else out of the Inteleon, very sadly. We do pick up a research of the prizes, so like I said, don't draw that terribly with this deck. Sure, you do have turns where you do dead draw, but for the most part you can actually draw some pretty nice hands with this deck, just purely because it is such an efficient attacking deck. My opponent is pondering what it is that they're going to be promoting, but I'm guessing they have a range of different attackers that they can work with. Even if a third of their hand is basic energies, I'm sure they have plenty that they can work with here. they do have the rescue stretcher, so they can grab out a Pokemon, most likely the Zebstrika, which it is indeed the Zebstrika, so they can attach to that on the following turn and finish off our last Pokemon here. Of course, they could also get a heads on the Mareep here, as it does potentially paralyze if they flip a coin and get heads, which is going to be problematic as it means we can't do anything. But even if we are still able to attack, we're only attacking for 40 damage at a time. Not going to be a huge amount to actually do anything worthwhile against my opponent here. Let's see what happens. They hit us for 20 and it is a Tails. We'll go for a Pokemon catcher on our side as well. See what we get. We do get heads, so we can bring up one of my opponent's Pokemon. Let's bring up the Zebstrika, why not? And we'll go for a Professor's Research. We're going high roll here. Let's see if we can get an Inteleon, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get it, so that was my only hope, getting the Inteleon there and trying to stall out, but there's nothing else that we can do, and ultimately I've just helped my opponent. I mean, they could have retreated anyway, so it's not really helping them that much, but we hit them for our massive attack of 40 damage, and then they can attach an energy to their active and attack us for the game. So at least we made it to the second round this time. The first tournament was pretty lackluster. This one we did deal a little bit more damage, did take a couple more knockouts, and we did at least win the first round. So we'll get some prizes, but not a huge deal. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like down below as always, and of course if you have any decks that you want to see in the future, be sure to leave it as a suggestion down below and I'll try and get round to checking it out. Or if you want to see any specific decks in a tournament setting like this, also let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.